Dexter, Original Sin. It's completed. Season 1 is completed. We got all 10 episodes. There's a possibility that there may be a season 2, but do we really need a season 2, y'all? Like, is this just the perfect origin story that we needed? All right, let's talk about it. All right, so before we kick off this discussion, let me welcome back those of you that's joining me again. Welcome back to the channel. I really appreciate it. And those of you that see me for the first time, hey, I'm Jonathan E. Turner, and here we discuss movies and series. So if you're a movie junkie, movie and series junkie like me, I think you'll be right at home, so feel free to subscribe. All right, so Dexter, Original Sin. This series ended the way it started. If you think back to like the episode 1 with Nurse Jackie, the way that ended, like that ending scene, it was good to watch. It made you feel good to watch. But if you look at that and then jump to the last episode, it becomes pretty clear that this is more of an introduction to the Morgan family and not just like only Dexter's origin story. So we're getting a deeper look into Harry, we're getting a deeper look into Debra. Out of the three, I feel like the focus was more on Harry Morgan, which is surprising. You'll assume like, okay, we got to put the spotlight more on Dexter. But by us understanding Harry, we understand Dexter more. This season, y'all, it made me, and I apologize if you hear some sniffing and see me rub my eyes. I'm going through allergy season as I'm recording this. But this season made me look at Harry Morgan completely different, because I think a lot of us watching the OG series, we looked at Harry as more like, okay, he's a good father figure. He took Dexter in. He supported Dexter's urges the best he could until he couldn't handle it anymore. So we didn't, it's like we felt mercy for him. But after watching this, okay, I'll put it to you like this. Say alternate universe, Dexter universe, Harry never pursued, I ain't gonna lie, y'all, I think it's Laura. Is it Laura, y'all? Yeah, Laura Moser. So if Harry never pursued Laura Moser, Dexter's mom, if we go back to the scenes where I think they were like brought in to the Miami Metro for like a whole different reason, and they had the idea, or Harry had the idea, to use her as a, what they called it, an informant. He wanted to use her as an informant. So alternate Dexter universe, this never happens. She goes on about her life. She raises Brian and Dexter to the best of her ability. Maybe she gets her life right. She seems like she was a smart woman. She knew how to handle herself. At the least, y'all, if we explore this alternate universe, at the least, I do believe Brian and Dexter would have lived like a normal life. If you take out like the violence and the killings and the urges, if you take that like away from Brian and Dexter, I do feel like they may have been like just two smart boys, like excelling in school and taking care of their mom. But as soon as Harry jumped into the picture, everything went dark. And I have one gripe when it comes to this series. One major gripe, I'll put it like that. I don't understand why Harry only took Dexter from the storage bin. We all know the iconic scene, they flash back to that moment so many times in the original series. We all know it. But in this Original Sin series, we actually see it play out, like from the beginning to the point where they reenact that iconic scene. I know what they were trying to do, the story they were trying to tell by Harry grabbing, picking up Dexter and pulling him away from Brian, but to the point where they had to like hold each other's hand as much as they could, but Harry like ripped Dexter's hands or ripped Dexter away from Brian, like literally. I know this was to put us in the mind state of, okay, Brian had it rough from the beginning, so the way he is also not his fault. But my gripe is, as a character, like Harry, he didn't seem like it was no reason for him to feel like a certain way about Brian. We see them in scenes like before this together. It seems like him and his wife both care for Brian and Dexter equally until Brian has the outburst. But if you think back, the outburst didn't happen until the shipping container. I mean, they could have like filled some gaps, like maybe Brian showed like early signs of being who he became to be. Maybe he was already like violent before the shipping container, I'm sorry. But no, they didn't give us anything. They just left it for us to assume this good cop with a good heart just took a brother from another brother without even thinking. And if we add Brian as like an additional member of the family, when it comes to him and his part in this series, it makes me go back to that scene in the first season of the original series where Dexter had him on his table. He finally called him, and it's almost like a deja vu almost, because if you think about it, the same way that Brian set up these crime scenes just to kind of keep an eye on Dexter, if I, like going off memory, I feel like he did the exact same thing in season 1 of Dexter. He set up these crime scenes. Thinking about it, why couldn't have Dexter like put 2 and 2 together? Cause I think even at one point in Original Sin, when he was dragging someone across the floor, he got a glimpse at the TV. And you can tell in that moment he looked at the TV. He was like, "Huh, that seems kind of off." And then he went back into his set up his kill. But thinking back to that, then thinking back to season 1, like how did Dexter miss that? Like when it happened multiple times. I don't know. I ain't gonna get too much into that, but yeah, that seems kind of off. But when it comes to that scene when Brian is on the table, if you do go through all the kills, everybody that was on the table, it does seem like, besides Deb, I don't know if Deb, I feel like Deb ended up on the table at one point, but I think someone was a person in Dexter, or it may have been Brian that put Deb on the table and Dexter saved her. I don't know, y'all refresh my memory. But when Brian was on the table, from what I remember, this is like the only moment where Dexter had like an intimate moment before the kill. So watching this, like Brian's story, Brian's origin play out, it made sense that he would want Dexter to be the one that end his life. Until his very end, he still just wanted to be a big brother. And I guess, I don't know, it just makes me sad, man. Just thinking back to like how they both was messed up based on what Harry did. But going back to that, maybe that intimate moment Dexter was having with Brian, maybe that was his way of like saying, like, okay, like, it's not our fault. We're both screwed up. It's not our fault. But getting back to Harry, the thing I did like about his origin story is like how, like his life before Dexter. So we didn't really know much about his wife. We didn't know anything about him having, from what I remember, a whole other son of his own. The death of his own son kind of explained, okay, this is why he wanted to take Dexter as his own. And that maybe, like a big maybe, could explain why he didn't have that much of a affection to Brian, because maybe Dexter was like the age of his son before he died. And Brian was a little bit older, so he couldn't really connect with him. And this series also gave you a deeper look into, because if you guys remember, he took his own life in the end. Like, I think it was like a family lie that he died. I think he died on duty or something like that. But later on in the original series, we found out that he just committed suicide because it seemed like he couldn't handle the pressure of what Dexter was. So we see this play out in this series. I think we all went in like with the idea, okay, he killed himself just based on like Dexter being a killer, serial killer. But no, after watching this, it's more of, okay, he did it because he created this serial killer. And that is a lot to handle, because him being a married man, so having an affair, then on top of having an affair, getting a woman killed, and on top of getting a woman killed, traumatizing two boys that grew up into two serial killers. So he has a lot on his conscience. And when it comes to Debra Morgan, I feel like we got like echoes of what we saw her go through in the latter part of the original series. That's when she kind of had that downward spiral and start dating all these weird men and doing drugs and stuff like that. So it's almost like she, if you think back to that Deb and then think about the original Sin Deb, it's like the two like are kind of very similar. Outside of like Deb having a best friend and her not having a real interest in being a police officer until later, besides those two things, I feel like we didn't really get that much on Deb, y'all, just to be honest. We know she felt some type of way about Dexter and Harry having this connection and kind of like leaving her out. We saw flashbacks in the original series like explaining all of this. And we know she had a weird relationship with Dexter. She always seemed like she was the more affectionate one, and Dexter was always the one that was like afraid to show his true feelings. We know that already. When I said my one gripe on the series was Harry taking Dexter and leaving Brian in a shipping container, that wasn't true. I actually have two. So it's that and it's the wife. I bring up the wife because I feel like Deb could have told the story of the wife, like Harry's wife. We don't know much about her. I think she had like maybe one or two like quick like 30-second scenes, if even that, and they may have mentioned her like once or twice. But besides that, we don't know who she is. We don't know what kind of connection she had with Deb. More importantly, we don't know what kind of connection she had with Dexter. Dexter did mention her, like he called her mom at one point, and that kind of confused me, because I'm like, okay, you were adopted into this family, so did you struggle with that? We did see that one scene with the mom, and she was like, okay, like, I think she said something along the lines of,
these boys need a mother.
but after that, it's like they just leave us to assume that her and Dexter and Harry and Deb just had this completely happy family with no issues at all, to the point where Dexter is calling her mom, which could most likely happen. I'm not saying it's impossible or it's a stretch for that to happen. Like, it could most likely happen, but I just want to know who this character was. I feel like if we know who she was, we can understand Deb more. We can actually get more like out of this. Like, did the mom have like a issue with men? Because we see that's one of Debra's like worst like patterns. Like when it comes to the man she chooses to date, it never lasts. It always ends in the worst way. Like, they had one scene where she looked at where the mom sat at the table, and she was breaking down. She was emotional. I'm like, okay, like what was you guys like relationship? Like, did you have like a good relationship? Are you emotional because you miss her, or are you emotional because you guys didn't really get to talk much? It's almost like they used her as a way to say, okay, Debra is alone. She no longer has a mother. All she has is Dexter and Harry, and they're kind of like pushing her to the side and focusing. They're both focusing on their own thing and just pushing her to the side. It's like they used the mom just to set that up. I'm like, nah, man, she's a, I know it's just a series, y'all, but she's a whole human being. She deserves like some substance. I think Dexter kind of fits in with Deb, y'all. The only thing I can think of, or the thing that I think about a lot when it comes to, okay, what did this series teach us about Dexter Morgan that we didn't already know? It showed us, like, we already knew he's like incredibly smart, but this series just kind of amplified that. Like, I think back to like a certain scene when he had his final kill on the table. What was his name, y'all? Got to look it up. Captain Spencer. So when he had Captain Spencer on the table, and what we thought, or I don't know about y'all, but what I thought, when he accidentally cut the saran wrap and kind of just said, okay, I'm going to let you think about it and I'm going to be back. I thought, because before this, we already seen him make like so many mistakes. So I was like, okay, is this like another mistake that he's going to regret? But then we see he actually did it on purpose so he can follow him and finally find his son. In that moment, I was like, okay, Dexter always been this guy. As a teenager, as an adult, that's cool and everything, but as a teenager, we have to agree that is like very impressive for a teenager to be that ahead of a grown man. Just like the series, how it ended, how it started, I think I have to end this video how it started. This series made me feel a lot of sympathy, made me feel sorry for Dexter, because none of this is his fault. Like I said in the beginning, y'all, he could have thrived as an intelligent college student and just be an average person if Harry didn't come into his life and get his mother killed, and all of this led to everything else. We saw this scene over and over again in flashbacks in the original series, but in this series, we see that him and Brian seem like they sat there with their dead mother chopped up in a pool of blood for like days. So not like hours, not like a couple minutes, but days. All that to say, Harry is a bad guy. Harry is he went from being the hero to, okay, he's possibly the worst villain of the entire Dexter universe. Man, I don't know. Is that too much, y'all? After processing my thoughts in this video for y'all, yeah, I don't like Harry. I don't like Harry Morgan, y'all. But besides that, y'all, Lieutenant LaGuerta, like, to me, all the other side characters, LaGuerta, Masuka, Batista, it was almost like, I mean, I'm not saying this in a bad way, but it was almost like the actors was like cosplay of the actors or the characters from the original series. So they didn't really give us anything for them. I mean, it's not saying it was needed. Like, the Morgan family and Brian was plenty. It was plenty. But I did like the nostalgia, hearing Masuka, the Masuka laugh again. Masuka had hair. The guy playing Batista looks like he looks almost out of his makeup or what, y'all, but he looks so much like the original series Batista, just a little bit slimmer. Christina Milian, like, wow, like, credit to her. She freaking embodied like LaGuerta. If they did do a season 2, it has to be from when Debra starts in Miami Metro or starts in the academy. I don't know how it works in the police departments, y'all, I assume, because we did see Debra like have to wear like the actual uniform and everything. So maybe I think they call it plain clothes. Nah, that's something else. That's like, I don't know what I'm talking about, but I feel like we have to see like Debra in the usual police uniform, like starting as a deputy or whatever you guys call it, in a whole blue outfit, y'all. We had to see her from that and Dexter doing this thing still. And like, it has to be a point where Debra, Harry, and Dexter are all working together. that's the only way like season 2 would work, if we see all of the Morgans in Miami Metro at the same time and how exactly that worked out. But after that, if they try like a season 3, I think that's like, okay, you getting too close to the original series. So with that being said, we could use a season 2, but just keep it like 2 or 3 minimum. Don't do 4 and 5, please.